Merrick County, one person is injured after driving their vehicle into a railroad crossing gate. The sheriff's office says it happened Saturday at the crossing on Highway 30 and Z Road. A Ford Escape was traveling southbound on Z Road, approaching the railroad crossing when the driver of the vehicle fell asleep, missing the curve and hitting the crossing gate. The driver received minor injuries. Alcohol or drugs are not suspected.